And we are live there. I'd like to say Joffrey, but it's not really a Joffrey. It's not a
No, it's not a.
G-E-O.
Oh,
I've got to go with
no.
Jeffrey.
Yes.
So, guys, what is going on out there today? Thanks for hanging out with us. Another episode of the Gold Ball Hunting podcast, which you can find in video on YouTube. You can find it in the iTunes store. And you can find it also over at Stitcher. A couple of audio formats for you as well. Jeff, good morning. Buenos dias, senor. ¿Qué pasa?
Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, I think we're finally gonna be shifting in the weather pattern here. Looks like long range. Finally, it's like it's gonna get good. But yeah, yesterday was a beautiful day all day.
Nice.
And then around 5 or so. But unfortunately on Sunday afternoon, we got some heavy rains for about 3.5 hours. So unfortunately, we didn't get any grass in yesterday, even though it was just a stunner of a day, and everybody was just chomping at the bit, wanting to get out
going.
there.
Right.
But they know that you just can't. You'll ruin the grass for the season if you get out there the way it is.
And plus,
just chew it up.
A little slip and slide, and
yeah.
I'm sure Bill doesn't want to test the liability policies.
Yes, exactly. So unfortunately, we had a nice day though. We had a nice little barbecue here at the club on the deck. Hung out,
good.
Chatted, told tall tales, and that was that. And then of course, I'm going to say around 8 o'clock last night, another little storm blew through. And then this week it looks a little choppy with the weather. But then after that, it looks like we're going to be starting to break out. So everybody around if you guys telling me that it's coming. Summer's coming. They keep telling me that.
If you're not careful, by October, it's going to be, I think we got a couple of good days coming.
That's right.
And, oh gosh,
but
the season's over.
I'll be saying that from California, though. So.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, listen, gang, again, thanks for hanging out with us. I've got a topic that Jeff doesn't know what's coming at him today, but I think he's going to like it, and I think you will too. Before we get to today's topic of discussion, free coaching call, right? 10-minute free private coaching call. The three of us get on the phone. It's not recorded. It's not published on anywhere. It's private, but you got to bring.
Nobody will know.
What's that?
Nobody will know.
No one will know. That's right. But you got to bring the one thing in your game right now that maybe is kind of holding you back from getting that result you want. So get on the call. Go over to goldballhunting.com. Drop in a first name, email address, click the button. You'll get immediate access to our online calendar where you can pick a date and time that works best for you. And guys, if you're already on the email list, I don't know what you're waiting for, because every time you get an email from us, somewhere in that email, there's a link that will take you to get a date and time that you want to chat with me and Jeff. So with that said, Jeff, I want to talk to you today about, I was actually listening to an old Tim Ferriss podcast, kind of looking for a little inspiration of what we could talk about today. And it was ironic. I mean, there was this one guy, I've forgotten his name now. Anyway, he was talking about how to get out of your own way, right? We always talk about that stuff. So,
right.
So it was like a 2-hour podcast. So I clicked a third of the way into it just to see. And the next thing you know is the guy's talking about the inner game of tennis. And I'm going, you got to be kidding me. What's going on here? So he's talking about that whole thing, self one, self two. But one thing that he mentioned that I thought that really kind of triggered, I think, today's topic is, and I do this from time to time when I'm practicing, and that is to sort of be really aware of what's the sound that happens at contact. And lots of times the sound is, ooh, that's a good sound.
That's a good one.
That's a good sound. And then there's other times where it's not a great sound. And so it's kind of like, well, can I recreate the sound of contact that actually produces the shot that I want. So I think
Yeah.
so I think the game is it's like I remember for a while this was God so long ago. I coached a girl who was going to actually she was in college, University of Washington, and I saw her in the summer times, and she was like 98% deaf, right? So we had to kind of work through you know not being able to have her not being able to hear
Right.
not only the ball that I was hitting, but the ball that she was hitting. And so to finding ways to kind of recreate, trying to duplicate the right stroke, the right shot, and that kind of stuff. But I don't think we pay enough attention to the auditory part of tennis.
Right.
Not only
Right.
what your opponent does, but what we do. And I think that one thing we could spend some more time on in practice is being way more aware of what that sound is at contact.
Right.
And for me, it's like when I do that, I don't have any, if I'm trying to be aware of the sound, I'm not really picking my eyes up to get a visual feedback of what I've done. I'm actually listening to what I've done. So,
right.
What do you
Well,
think?
that's the first, there's, which travels faster, the feel or the sound of the contact, right? I mean, I don't know. It's probably debatable, right? So, I mean, I know, you hit a ball and you can tell by the sound that, I kind of chunked that one a little bit. I know that. So immediately you start responding to that in terms of, I'm going to give a little ground here. I know my ball's going to land shallow, or, hey, I'm going to hold up here and maybe cheat the cord a little bit because I know I mishit that. I didn't hit it very well, but it's turning out pretty good. So it's not an automatic, I should retreat and go automatic defensive. It's an awareness of that sound and in concert with the visual, what's actually going on. So but I think most players probably immediately shift like the sound is, if they're aware of it, number one, is automatically, this is a bad thing that just happened, and so because it works both ways on the scale there, you know that. I mean, John and I won our first national when I, totally chunked the return to serve on match point. And I just ended up hitting this perfect lob over the incoming server's head. Good news.
Unintentional,
right?
Unintentional thing of beauty.
Right. So, but the sound is like really important, and I think it's another blind spot, especially in the league tennis. Not understanding that the sound is giving you an indicator of what you produced, and also definitely an indicator of what your opponent has produced. And you hear it all the time. You're out there playing on the court, Brenny, and you hear, you watch this thing, and you heard how poorly the ball was hit. You see how shallow the ball's landing in the court, and you're watching this thing next to you, and you're hearing the guy go, "Oh, great shot, Bill." And he's completely serious that he's thinking Bill actually hit this great drop shot intentionally, and it was a complete mishit. So there's this complete detachment from, the sound of the ball and what it actually means.
Yeah.
And anyway, I don't know if that's where you're going with that.
Well,
but I think it's huge.
I'm trying to go more towards, I think, getting back to how in this podcast it was like, well, how do we get out of our own way? And I think one of the ways that we kind of get stuck is there's so many competing thoughts, or maybe we're just sort of multitasking thought-wise in terms of how to produce a stroke. And it's like that little checklist of, well, I got to do this, 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 and you try to reproduce, you try to manufacture the stroke, and it just doesn't work. At least it doesn't work on a consistent basis. So I think trying to reproduce sound is a little way of, it's more like a cue, right? So it's rather than it's
well, I think it's a great cue because it's a focus not on technique.
That's right.
It's a focus on it automatically kind of puts you, when we focus on those types of details, the sound, the visual, how's my posture? Those types of things that actually transcend that and actually create the kinetic chain we want and make us quiet at the moment of impact, and that because we're paying attention to something else that we're normally not that focused on. And so it can be a great tool, to produce, because we end up getting a little more quiet in the mind then, because we're not distracted by the hyper detail of our checklist.
I think the other thing too is we're not living out in the nano future, right? I mean, we're
Right.
in the immediate. So if you're scrambling around the court in a point and you're just trying to get the thing back in play, I think one thing what you can do is you can sort of artificially slow time down by thinking, well, what's the sound I want to create on this shot? And if obviously if you haven't practiced this, if you haven't tried this in practice, then I don't know how you're going to turn on the light switch and go, okay, well, let's work on the sound now. I mean, this is something that you gotta really be aware of in practice. And so, I just think I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it's a great, it's another, we talk about constraints and we talk about what are you paying attention to when you're warming up,
right?
When you're hitting balls. And so it's a great tool. And again, it's a skill. And so all these things in tennis require attention. And so, learning to actually listen to the sound of the ball off your racket and your opponent's, there's just massive amounts of information there. Huge amounts of information.
That's
right. That's very telling as to, clarity, purity of shot, all that. And if you just spend, 5 minutes during the warm-up paying attention to what it sounds like, associating those sounds to the reality of what the ball's doing.
Right.
Again, now you're starting to build a really clean database for clarity, understanding what that means. What does that sound mean? So I can tell the difference between a slice, a heavy topspin, a drive, all those things just by the sound.
Yeah. Well, and I think too that if you're aware of, we talk a lot about spacing and the ideal point of contact, unique to each player, that if there's really an optimal sound, let's say for a forehand, basic rally ball, semi-topspin, that sound only really happens at a certain point of contact. So if you're too far out in front, or if you're a little bit late, or if you're jammed a little bit, if the ball is a little bit too far away, you're not going to reproduce the high quality sound that you want. Right. So anyway, there you have it. So well, listen.
Well, I'm gonna jump in. There's another layer of the sound too. Is you're at the club and somebody's alarm goes off in the parking lot or something. It on the surface at the shallowest level, it's just simply annoying, right? The sound is there. As long as I can still hear the ball being hit, I can move past it. I can play. You can do the same thing, Brenny.
Right.
Better players understand that it's simply something that I need to filter out at the moment. I know the guy's not sitting out there and didn't intentionally, I'm going to turn my car alarm now. He's whatever. It's a new car or whatever. He hit the button while he's sitting on the deck, watching a match accidentally. Now his car's, going nutty. So it's not about that sound, or are the courts next to traffic, or are they next to whatever?
Yeah.
Something that creates it. So the biggest thing in that issue is it's not the sound itself, but is the sound drowning out your ability to hear the ball being hit. Because that information for you, for me, for better players, the sound of the ball being struck is just a huge amount of information.
Yeah.
And so that's really for me what starts to throw me off is if I can't hear the ball being hit, then we have a little bit of a problem.
Yeah. Well, look,
but
I think
if it's just ambient sounds that are just annoying, then I can filter that out.
Yeah, but I think a lot of ambient sounds end up becoming an excuse to if things don't go right. Now all of a sudden it's like, well, how can I play? How can I play? We got the guy's horn in the parking lot going off, and it's kind of like a conspiracy theory against me because I know that the universe doesn't want me to win this match today, so. Somehow the guy decided, he got up after his beer and lunch, and he's on the deck, and boom, the sound goes off. Anyway,
sound goes off, right?
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah. Look, Jeff, good stuff. Thanks, man. As always, guys. Quick reminder on the free coaching call: 10 minutes. It's short, so you got to bring that one thing in your game that is a struggle, and let Jeff and I put you in the path to get the result that you eventually want. Go over to goalballhunting.com, drop in a first name, email address, click that button, and then you'll get access to the online calendar scheduler. So, Jeffrey, what do we want the fine folks to do right now?
like us, share us. Please subscribe. Let us know what you think down below.
Outstanding. Well done, my man. Wow.
Thank you.
Guys,
Such
get
clarity.
out there. Well, the sound. It's the sound.
It's the sound.
Yes. Get out there today, everybody. Help someone else have a spectacular day. Jeff will do this again tomorrow.
Can't wait.